मसाले तो बहुत हैं, पर प्रकृति की गोद से खास चुने मसाले जिनकी ताजगी, खुशबू और स्वाद रहे बरकरार, ऐसे उम्दा मसाले बनाते हैं सिर्फ कैच। कैच का कोई मैच नहीं, 100%।
Next, we have P. Sivakami, an Indian Dalit feminist writer, former IAS officer and activist, predominantly known for her writings in Tamil. The author will be unveiling her book, The Language of the Mirror, followed by a session underlining the key aspects of the book and how it came about. In conversation will be Meena Kandasamy, an Indian poet, fiction writer, translator, and activist.
Hello and welcome to the Times Literary Festival. Today I have the pleasure of being in the company of Sivakami IAS, who is a prolific writer and exceptionally unmatched when it comes to talking about the lives of women. And today we are going to discuss her latest novel, which is The Language of the Mirror, and we just got copies which are literally fresh off the press. So this is the book. Go and find it and buy it for us. And so you will be having a short reading from Mom. Which is it your 6th novel or your 8th novel?
In English, it's the first novel. Though I translated my first work into English, it's called The Grip of Change. But this is my debut novel.
This is Mom's debut novel in English. So we're going to have a lot of questions on that. Like a lot of people are very eager to listen more from Mom about this book, and we're also going to hear her read eventually. So Mom, my first question is a lot about the fact that you have done 3 things, 3 really different things. One of them is writing in Tamil. The other is translating your own fiction from Tamil into English, and the third is writing fiction in English itself. How do you see these 3 processes as a very creative person? What's the differences, similarities?
Writing in Tamil is spontaneous and natural for me, as you know. For everyone, whose mother tongue is Tamil. And I translated my own novel because I was posted in Tokyo, and I had in my spare time nothing to do. I didn't know Japanese language that much, and I joined there, so I thought I better do the translation of my work. That's how I ended up translating my first novel. But writing in English, I didn't imagine that I would write a novel in English, because I was there in the US and I lived there for a year. And also most of the characters in the novel are English speaking people. And the entire atmosphere is English, so I thought it is better to write in English.
Write in English. How did you find the process? Was it easy to just find the words, or did you think you have to change yourself as a novelist to write in English?
Because I was speaking and I was living in the midst of people, so it wasn't that difficult.
Okay.
It was also spontaneous, I think.
I just have another question, which relates to the world of I remember many years ago, Sivapriya Penguin sent me your Pariyan Fedalu and The Taming of Women, and I just fell into this world of women. And once again, I read your book, and it's so populated by just women and relationships of women with each other, relationships of women with the men in their life, but all that is really secondary. So what bonds, how do you explain this? Like, what makes you go towards women characters?
I think it's natural for me to write about women, one thing, for the reason that we belong to the same gender, one. But there is a need to write about women because their life is much different than the man's, and also their relationship with the human beings, whatever in relationship with husband or father and all that. I have already written in Tamil.
Yes.
Taming of Women as well as The Grip of Change. But this is a theme where the question of empowering women is quite interesting. It was quite interesting to me. One. Secondly, to be frank, I met, I think during my stay in the US, or the narrator, she has only seen women. Because she is there, the narrator is in the Women and Gender Sexuality Studies department.
So
Most of the lecturers are women, and the head of the department is women. The course coordinator is a woman.
So she lives in this little women's world.
And the friends also, the scholars, research scholars.
Do you think that, just sort of curiosity, do you think that the novel ends up being so introspective and so much, so much happens in the inside world as it happens in the outside world? Because it's women, because we think a lot, because we process or think, we rethink everything? I don't know.
I think the title, The Language of the Mirror, says it's a kind of a self-introspection. And men also must be doing the same thing. But not from the... maybe.
Yes, maybe.
Maybe. I have seen many novels, men doing introspection, but it never occurs to them that, somebody is miserable in his own life, and he fails to see that. He fails to see in his introspection also.
Even in the introspection, there are these big gaps.
Big gaps.
Yeah. So I just again this is going back to the novel, which for me represents a shift from what is regularly encountered in Indian writing in English, which is everybody writes about this longing for home and nostalgia and living abroad, and but this is so different because I think after a long time I read, I'm not even sure long time, for the first time I read something where every little aspect of life as a foreigner is just mined for the experience, like the way Bhuvana sees the foreign countries, the way she talks about the buses being on time, the way she's surprised that people wish the driver, they say a thank you to the driver, the way she talks about, like even very little details like how is it to shop in the mall, and why
Standing in the
queues and all of this, like she
which
really
is quite alien to us.
Yeah, so she looks at everything with these really fresh eyes. And what do you think about this experience of writing about being abroad?
This is not the first time that I lived abroad.
I know that now.
Earlier, the 3 years I lived in Japan,
Yeah.
and
No, but that's exactly why.
but the language was a barrier, so I couldn't really mix with the people there. So I was learning the language, but I couldn't mix with them. Whereas this is kind of a second language to us, our mother tongue is the first, and second language is English. So therefore, I was able to mix with them. One, and secondly, you must have read or seen the movie A Passage to India, where a particular, it was so. I was so curious to, it was so hilarious also, because in the train, in the toilet, an Indian man with a turban on his head, he will be making tea. So, and foreigner looks so strangely at this, So, for me also, there are many strange things that are, because we are from a different Oriental culture and the Western culture. There are differences, and how they look at us and how we look at them. So, these are all quite interesting to me. So, it is not kind of all the time, I sometimes I do appreciate their, kind of timeliness, and also greeting each other, and also standing in the queue, and some discipline. At the same time, there are some selfishness, and then also the complex of being superior and look down upon people. So these are the points that I had noticed, and I wasn't affected so much, but as an observer, I've been watching them, and quite interesting it was.
Yes, and this is the reason why I point out this about Ma'am's book is because you're no stranger to foreign countries, but you still manage to keep the freshness for your character. She really has, when she encounters something foreign, she has a fresh person's perspective. That's so authentic, because it reminds me of like if everybody who visited abroad at later points in their life. I went abroad first when I was 25, like really late. A lot of young children go to study, so it was like I would say thank you to the opening doors. because I started saying thank you to everybody, and it just became a kind of practice to say thank you.
Yeah.
Even the door opened for you, like, even mechanical doors.
Yeah. True.
So you know what I mean. So coming back to this question of
When we go abroad, what we try to do is we try to become them, and so we try to follow. But sometimes, I resist,
yeah, we have
and
to,
we resist, and also see what's good in them. So should I follow this? Sometimes the mannerism is so irritating for me. I couldn't replicate, and I won't do that. But at the same time, I just watch. Okay, it's their mannerism. I am not finding fault, but I cannot do
just
that.
difference, yeah.
And also, people adopt some, that slang, and then they pronounce it very Americanized and all that. But I couldn't do that. I'm being an Indian. I'm Indian.
My pronunciation has not changed, ma'am.
No, I'm not saying you.
Very
Generally, people try to speak the way that Americans speak, right?
Definitely.
So that's what I'm saying. So
Definitely. There's another question which is again startling in some parts of the world, is also the fact that you have to carry your ID on you all the time, which I
don't tell me,
yeah.
because the very word ID. Because many a time I forget. Sometimes I've gone to the airport also without my ID, because we keep changing purses, right?
Yeah.
So from one purse, then you put your ID in another person. You don't remember whether you have put it back or something. So you carry that purse and you end up without the ID. So it's a nightmare.
Yes. So I'm going to ask. I really enjoyed a certain excerpt in this novel where we are talking about this precise thing, but also it made me think about undocumented people, about immigrants, asylum seekers. What happens if you're a person without papers in the US? So I'm just going to ask you for the listeners.
So the nightmare?
Yes, the nightmare.
Returning to her room, Bhuvna panicked. She checked her coat pockets for her office's key. Luckily, it was there. She was ashamed. She was panicking for trivial things. She was losing her memory slowly. She wanted to throw the key out of her window and earn her freedom. What would happen if she lost it? Till she got a new one, she would be out in the cold like a beggar whom she once saw in the Ginza subway stations of Tokyo. He was wrapped from head to toe in polythene sheets collected from garbage bins. If the security guards drove her away at night, she would have to find a shelter where she was safe from the cold. If they grilled her, she might blabber that she was doing all this for fun. Who knows, they may then put her in jail or in a facility for disturbed people, or they may deport her. She laughed at her bizarre flights of fancy. Was she going to end up in jail or going to enjoy her freedom? Her freedom lay in her identity. She should always remember who she was. Suddenly, her passport, social security number given by the host country, identity card issued by the university, her bank passbook, credit cards, basic identity card issued by the Indian government, and some loan documents paraded before her, proofs of her very being, her freedom. She could never afford to lose them. In case she did, she might have to depend on Annabelle or Patrick or Karen or on all the three. The fact that her freedom was at the mercy of few strangers not only frightened her but also dulled the flavor of her dill-flavored vadas. Consciously or unconsciously, she was getting caught in the webs of her own making.
Thank you, Mom.
Thank you.
When we translate from English to from Tamil to English, people always go on and say, "How do you describe a vada?" For the foreign audience, So do you say it's a savory donut-shaped snack? This question is really interesting question. But I think you really answered that question beautifully, because wait a second, let me do that.
I've given the recipe.
Yes, you've given the recipe. Yes, and I thought this is a nice shortcut. You don't have to describe what's the vada. You just give the recipe. So it's like after grinding, Bengal gram coarsely, she added sour chopped onions, green chilies, and dill as a replacement for curry leaves. the batter was formed into small balls and flattened to a round shape before being deep fried in oil. And I thought this is very clever, isn't it? Like she doesn't have to, exercise the vada by saying, it's like a donut because it is not a donut.
No, it is not at all.
And then you don't have to say some fried snack or something. You explain how it's done and then people get it. I really like that part. But I'm going to something more serious than the vada, which is that Bhuvana is a researcher
Yeah.
and she's researching about women in politics.
Yes.
And it's really, really interesting because you've been somebody who's, active, not just as a writer or an activist, but also as somebody who's, taking steps into politics. What are Bhuvana's findings and what are Shiva
Let me,
Kamina's findings?
before going into the findings, let me tell you the experience that Bhuvana had,
Mm-hmm.
kind of
You
this
narrated.
narrated.
Yeah, sure.
Even Indian women who are empowered,
Mhm.
they think it's utter foolishness to start a political party of your own.
Mhm.
So this kind of a feeling, it is not existent in, at least in US.
Mhm.
People appreciate it, okay, whatever it is,
Mhm.
whether you are going to win or lose, that doesn't matter.
Mhm.
But at least, they appreciate this venture.
Mhm.
But also they are doubtful whether you
But
may
they
be able
only
to
have a
win.
two-party system, so
Yeah, two-party system.
so they
So
don't-
joining
you
politics,
have to join one or the other.
Yeah,
You cannot
one or
start
the-
something. Yeah.
something.
Mhm.
So, but when such an adventure is there,
Mhm.
or venture is not adventure, venture is there.
Mhm.
So people do appreciate.
Mhm.
But our Indian women, so they think still in their minds politics is something very dirty, and educated women especially. So they would like to, of course they are all in informal politics. I can't say that they are not in politics. Informal politics like writing essays and participating in debates and expressing your opinions in media. These are all part of informal politics.
Mhm.
But when it comes to actual politics,
Mhm.
then real politics, they are not there. So
Mhm.
there's a huge vacuum. So that's what I was interested in pointing out.
Mhm.
And Bhuvana had some interviews with the Senate members.
Yeah, yeah.
So the Senate members, interviews throw some light on, how women can, because see, when you say politics, people expect you to become a MLA, MP.
Mhm.
Politics means power related politics.
Mhm.
But there are other things like social change,
Mhm.
how we are influencing people,
Mhm.
and so that is not in our minds. So this is necessary. Of course, real politics is where, see, you are asking for land for the poor people.
Mhm.
You are asking. So that is, you are in real politics. But if you are not contesting in the election and you are not winning, you will not be in a place to distribute it. Even if you are in a place to distribute it, you will not be able to distribute to the needy people, because the party people have their own ways of distributing land to their party men only. So women have to be in not only in informal politics and formal politics also, they have to be there.
Mhm.
So that is what
That
I
was
was trying to,
Bhuvan as well. I really like something about, I forget the name actually because it's really lots of characters. She meets a politician, a female politician, a women politician, and she's wearing high boots and a mini skirt and I think a long purple overcoat. or
Overcoat.
something.
very pretty woman.
And Bhuvana is amazed at the size of her mini skirt. And what do you really think about, women's perceptions about clothing? I think that there's so much about it in this whole book. Everybody, there's so much nuance. Like you capture everything. Like when she wears the sari, she wants to be taken seriously. Like when she wears heels and everybody's removing the footwear, she's frustrated. So there's so much about clothes. What do you think about
Yeah,
clothes?
it's quite an observation,
Mhm.
right? See, in India,
Mhm.
a politician cannot wear a miniskirt and go
No.
to. Cannot. So naturally, when I see people, then I am also surprised. My surprise finds place in my narration.
Mhm.
So that is one. But I'm not saying, I'm not passing any judgment.
No.
I'm not judgmental, but I'm just observing one. Yeah.
Mhm.
And also, see,
But also, for instance, there's this beautiful line in the book that says, for Bhuvana, saris and hijab are only very small things.
yeah.
They are not
Also,
fundamental things for her.
Yeah.
Whereas, some people just complicate this discourse around clothing so much. So
yeah. One thing,
When,
because
Mariam is there.
yeah, whenever I want, I can magnify. That is not a, because when I find, because when men consider sari, when women wear sari only, they consider beautiful Indian men.
Mm-hmm.
Then I magnify the sari. So it's a burden on me. It's a man's world, kind of a thing. But at the same time, there is politics everywhere. So when they talk about hijab,
Mm-hmm.
so the real issue is, brushed under the carpet.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't want to bring the real issue. So they want to find, you see, look at the Arab countries,
Mm-hmm.
women have got much more freedom, and more people are in parliaments,
Mm-hmm.
more people are in politics. Some of the Indian women who live there, recently they participated in a conference and they said, their condition is much better than Indian women. But we are not highlighting this. We are only highlighting the hijab. So look at this. So that's what I said. So hijab and saris are not very great things.
It's very superficial.
Very superficial. If you want to wear it, you wear it. You want to throw it, you throw it. People are wearing it, we are throwing it. There are different kinds of people depending upon their kind of, their surroundings and their mental makeup and sense of freedom. There are so many things involved. So, but at that point of time, I don't want others to make hijab as a big issue.
Definitely. Thank you. No, it was really insightful to read that. There's another thing that I want to come and which I'm kind of circling before I ask this question to you. The narrator in this novel undergoes an immense tragedy. She loses her own child, and it's very difficult because she's far away, but she's still processing her trauma. She's still processing her grief, and she's still looking for answers. And I know that personally, you were bereaved, and this is something that's really very close to you. I don't want to force you to talk about it, but if you want to say something.
No, before that, see, when you said about clothing, I want to add one more.
Yes, please.
Actually, see, I look at her clothes,
Mm-hmm.
but her observation, I record it carefully. When she says, I'm poor, she said,
Mm-hmm.
because she runs the diner restaurant and also works as an accountant and also mother of two, and she's also, she didn't complete her education. So there are so many factors.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to people, she says, lending ears to the poor people or lending ears to the people is the biggest qualification for a politician.
Mm-hmm. Listening to people, yeah.
Listening to people.
Mm-hmm.
So listening is not, here we have a different parameters for politicians.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, clothes are one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But she wears all kind of clothes, but
Mm-hmm.
her ideas are very clear.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I wanted to make a contrast there. That there is a purpose in also in observing and describing and also, which is important. I have mentioned there.
Mm-hmm.
So regarding the bereavement,
Mm-hmm.
People, of course, everyone in life, they lose somebody or other. And if you lose your own, son or daughter, then you are all the more pained.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been seeing the pain of my mother. She lost 3 children. And yet she is hopeful of something. And she wants to heal people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she's a source of inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean that one doesn't undergo the pain.
Mm-hmm.
So the pain is so severe,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can cripple you.
Mm-hmm.
So you are very careful, you undergo the pain and also you're careful not to succumb to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So the Puna, because
she's
she
going through it.
undergoes.
There's a point where Bhuvana is the relationships with the women in her life, like her mother, for instance. She's always asking her mother for answers, like what is the afterlife? Or she goes to her mother and says, I used to think all this is acting only. And then I said, and she says, and I think that you learned all the acting from your mother-in-law, and then she asks her, maybe it's not acting, because her mother is sometimes like a possessed woman, So what do you feel about, and I found it like, actually quite political to write about what are people's belief systems, because this is not organized religion. People being possessed, people believing in healing, people believing in that women can be divine, under specific circumstances. These don't come in the major organized religions. This is not quote unquote Brahmin till Hinduism. This is not quote unquote Christianity. This is not quote unquote Islam. But it still exists and still faith. And what do you feel about this alternate world that exists out there?
Actually, see, as you mentioned that, I also found it very hilarious. People shake, when they behave like possessed, as you said. But the thing is, when Buna experiences it herself, so she's trying to relate the experiences of others. You can't generalize such, behaviors and
Definitely.
because it's so individual. So individual. One thing, like our palm, which is not similar. See, each palm may be different, kind of. So that is also the depending because you undergo some experiences once, and you are always in the continuous quest of what's life, what's afterlife, what is death. So when you are seriously considering all this, you also experience something very unique, feelings. So you try to record it. It's not kind of saying that, oh, this is the thing and all that. See, the world that we know is very small.
Limited, yes.
Very limited. Our knowledge is also very limited.
Yes.
So
I think it's so much about respect.
so we cannot just brush aside these experiences, unique experiences, just because they don't fit into our, already, the framework that we have, either religious framework or political, whatever. So there are some factors happening beyond this framework. So I try to kind of analyze and then narrate and then also sometimes discard or live with it. So all that has been tried in the novel.
Yes, beautiful. There's something else that there's many things I want to flag off and highlight and appreciate. But there's one thing which is how beautifully you do all the descriptions. You really are in love with the landscape. So can you tell us about this place that you have written?
You want me to say which is the
No.
Because I don't want to do that.
No. What inspired you, whether it's the colors or whether it's the cold,
The people,
everything.
they fit in with the weather, so much. One and
especially because we at least in Tamil Nadu we don't really see the seasons change in the same way. So
we don't have 4 seasons like most of the countries have.
Yes.
Especially Southeast Asia, East
Especially
Asia.
dark, we don't have the dark winters.
Dark winters and all. So that was a unique experience. One is, you get so much time to yourself to see all this. Maybe here also there are beautiful things, but somehow we don't have the time to see it because we are so preoccupied with the cooking, with the managing the household and working and earning and so there are so many things, maybe writing also. There, I think the time flies so, peacefully and then you look at your surroundings, it's all so beautiful. There are no words to describe.
Yes, no, but you've done a great job, whatever you described. I have some questions in terms of, women and politics, for instance. You talk about what are the barriers for them to enter. Bhuvana's work actually deals with that. And now at the beginning of this novel, there's this Chinese woman who gets on the bus and she asks, what did you eat for breakfast? And she says, I just had toast and fruits. And then she says, why don't you cook a breakfast? And she says, I don't want to waste my time making breakfast. And I remember as a little girl, my mom would never let me into the kitchen. And she would say, don't waste your life here, just get out. So all the cooking I learned was from my father. So my mom was like, you're going to do a lot of your life into this, so don't spend your childhood here, like your young years here. So the fact is that still, the labor of the kitchen, the labor of the household is something that, women are made to pay for it, and otherwise what they do is they just outsource it to other women. So I don't take care of my children, somebody else does it. So it becomes like, so what is the, how does it, especially in a country like India where women do a lot of the household chores, so they are intricately, burdened with it. Do you see that as a burden to entering politics? Or burden to anything as well?
Yeah, it depends on your lifestyle. See, here also I've been cooking.
Mm-hmm.
There also I did cooking, but not to that extent.
Mm-hmm.
And the tension is not there.
Mhm.
See, when you cook, then you have to cook on time for your children, for your family members.
Mm-hmm.
So even if it is half an hour late, then you become,
Mm-hmm.
tense. But there, you're cooking for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So your mood decides your cooking.
Mm-hmm.
So here, everybody else other than your mood decides cooking.
Okay.
So that is the difference. But I enjoy cooking because it's a kind of a diversion from my, kind of an agony, pain, or hard work, stress, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes out. It's like a stress buster.
Okay. Okay, that's wonderful. That's about cooking. There's a lot of. I like a lot about Bhuvana in this book, but there's something that I just wanted to flag up and talk, which is that they often say that when women reach middle age, they become invisible to people. People just don't notice them. People are not, and the reasons for that is like very particular. Like young women are seen as sexual objects in this very patriarchal society, so people notice them. Children are also noticed, but at some point, the middle-aged woman just begins to disappear, and you don't find so many middle-aged protagonists, whether it's in fiction or film. And what was your decision to anchor this book on a middle-aged protagonist?
Because they are a source of rich experience.
Mhm.
So they're able to live a better life.
Mm-hmm.
See, when you are young, you're bound to do some mistakes.
Mhm.
No one is an exception.
I like this place in this novel actually. I think Sheila tells to
Um,
Bhuvana,
Yeah.
do all the mistakes that you can, or do all the flirting that you can. People will forgive you because they'll say you were young and you did this,
yeah,
And I like that as well.
yeah. So when you're young,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay that you can do some mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But this is middle age is a better part of your life, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because your tension about education is over,
Mhm.
your employment, career, almost reaching to a kind of your peak point.
Mhm.
And now it's a harvesting season,
Mm-hmm.
so where you harvest all your hard work
Mm-hmm.
and your past life,
Mm-hmm.
and then enough time to think about it, and if you can change yourself for the better, that you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a very rich, I think the middle-aged woman is a very rich woman.
Mm-hmm. That's of life experiences.
yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Are you writing something now?
Yeah, I'm writing a novel right now.
Tamil, English?
It's in English again.
Okay.
Yeah, untitled.
I'm untitled.
But it's about like sexual harassment.
Okay. The rule, is it about Me Too? No.
It's not about Me Too,
But sexual harassment.
but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very eager to read this as well, Mom. Thank you so much.